I stood behind the heavy velvet curtain cap perfectly pinned over my curls. Diploma folder clutched in my shaking hands for years of sleepless nights, side jobs, skipped meals, and it all came down to this moment. I was the first in my family to graduate college, the first to get past community college, actually. My heart was racing with pride and nerves, but then I heard my father's voice. Rough and slurred, cutting through the crowd in the front row. Don't look so proud. Girl, we paid for that piece of paper you just partied your way through, my mother chuckled, not bothering to whisper. She looks ridiculous in that gown, like a penguin trying to act important. I froze behind the curtain. I should have known. I had invited them out of guilt, out of some pathetic hope they'd show up and see my hard work. But they didn't change. Not even for one day. As my name was called and the spotlight hit me, I stepped forward. Head held high, I could feel their eyes on me. My classmates cheered, some clapped, some whistled. My professor smiled proudly. But as I crossed the stage and reached for the dean's hand, I saw my father rise from his seat. Ooh. No daughter of mine deserves applause for wasting my money, he roared. The auditorium fell silent, and then he climbed the steps in front of the entire crowd. A slap. The microphone caught the sound of his palm across my cheek. I stumbled, nearly dropping my folder. Gasps filled the air. Someone shouted, "Security." My mother stood and laughed. She needed that. Maybe now she'll remember who gave her everything. I was stunned, humiliated. On what should have been the proudest day of my life, I had been assaulted on stage by my own father. But what I remember more than the sting of that slap was what happened next. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just turned slowly, picked up my fallen graduation cap and said into the microphone, "You didn't give me everything, you gave me trauma, and now you've given me freedom." Then I walked off the stage. Security escorted them out as the entire auditorium buzzed with whispers and cell phones recording, but I didn't look back. After the ceremony, my professors surrounded me. Some students hugged me. One dean said softly, "You handled that with more dignity than I've seen in years." But the truth? I was crumbling inside. I spent the next week avoiding their calls. My parents sent dozens of messages, some angry, some manipulative. "You embarrassed us. You should apologize. We sacrificed for you. Your sister would have been grateful." Yes, my sister, the golden child. She dropped out of college in her second semester, got a nose job on their dime, and never worked a real job, yet they praised her like royalty. I was the mistake, the ungrateful one, but I wasn't broken, not anymore. Because what they didn't know was I had been planning quietly, strategically, and what I was about to do would change everything they thought they owned. After that public humiliation, I disappeared for a while. I blocked my parents, deactivated social media, and left town without telling a soul. I needed time, not just to heal, but to strategize. They had turned my graduation day into a nightmare. But I wasn't going to let that be the final scene. I moved in with my roommate Hannah from college, whose family had treated me more like a daughter than my own ever had. I worked 3 jobs. Freelance editing by night, waitressing weekends, and running admin for a startup during the day. I didn't complain because every hour I worked pushed me closer to my plan. You see, back when I was 16, my grandfather, my dad's dad, quietly made me the secondary beneficiary to a long-term investment he had set up for his retirement. I had helped him when he was sick, fed him, took care of his meds. My parents barely visited. He died 2 years into my college journey, and without telling anyone. I rolled the funds into a trust account under a lawyer's supervision, quietly, legally. My parents never knew I had access to any money because I never touched a dime until now. With the trust funds and my own savings, I did something they never saw coming. I bought their house. They had no idea it was in pre-foreclosure. My father hadn't paid the property taxes in over a year. Too busy gambling, my mother was still spending on spa days and my sister's endless rent and car payments. The house went on auction. I placed the highest bid through a proxy, and just like that, the home they constantly reminded me I'd never be good enough to inherit belonged to me. The week later, I had the locks changed. And when my parents returned from a weekend spa getaway, they didn't even pay for themselves. They stood outside their own front door, trying every key they owned. I watched from my parked car across the street. My mother was screaming into her phone. My dad was pounding on the door. Then I stepped out. "You might want to stop doing that," I said calmly. "It's considered trespassing now." My mother's mouth fell open. My dad's fists curled. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "I own this house," I said, holding up the deed, "and starting today, you don't." "You ungrateful brat," my mom shrieked. "After everything we gave you, you mean after everything you stole, like dignity, support, peace of mind," I snapped. "You mocked me, beat me in public, and still thought I'd hand you my life on a silver platter. You can't do this," my dad roared. "We raised you." "No," I said. You raised your hands at me repeatedly, and now I raised my credit score, my income, and your mortgage payment. So get off my property." They stood there, stunned. My mom burst into tears. My dad's face went purple, and just when I thought they'd walk away, they pulled one last card. "Well then," my mom hissed, "I hope you enjoy paying our pensions since they're tied to the house." Wrong. I smiled, actually, about those pensions. Back when I acquired the house, I discovered the retirement account was partially funded through the house's equity. When I bought it, I legally froze that equity account and redirected it into a family trust controlled by me. A clause left in my grandfather's paperwork allowed the secondary beneficiary to transfer management in case of family dispute or abuse. All I had to do was file the evidence of the graduation incident, which I did with 3 high-quality videos, submitted to the court. Now, their pension withdrawals were blocked until a new trustee was approved. And since I had power of attorney over my grandfather's trust, let's just say, I whispered, "You'll need to start applying for jobs, maybe as janitors at my old school. I hear they're hiring." They both stood in the yard, faces drained of color. For the first time in my life, they were the ones powerless. I turned away. "Have a nice life," I said, unlocking the door. "And tell my sister the same. She just lost her rent sponsor, too." Then I closed the door. Behind me, silence. In front of me, peace. I wish I could say they walked away quietly with their heads hung in shame. But people like my parents don't. No humility. For the next few weeks, I received angry voicemails, texts full of venom. Even some awkward messages from distant relatives calling me cruel and dramatic. They didn't know the full story, they never do. But I wasn't in the business of explaining myself anymore. What I did next wasn't about vengeance anymore, it was about healing what they broke in me. First, I renovated the house, not to live in it, but to transform it into a place that helped others like me. I turned my childhood bedroom into a mini office, the living room became a counseling hub. And the basement, where I had once hidden from my father's temper, now had shelves full of books, legal resources, and even a tea station. I called it the second start home. It became a safe space for young adults who had aged out of the foster system or were abandoned by toxic families after college. They got shelter, financial literacy lessons, resume help, therapy. Everything I once wished someone had offered me. When the news about the center made it into a local paper, with my story anonymously told, the donations started flowing in. Lawyers volunteered pro bono, therapists reached out, even one of my old professors came to offer workshops. And what about my parents? They did try to fight back. They hired a lawyer to regain access to the pension. It didn't go well. My lawyer showed the graduation video, the footage of my father hitting me on stage, my mother clapping. The judge didn't even let the case finish. Pension permanently transferred to me as trustee with one condition: that I use it for moral purposes consistent with the values of the original grantor. That was my grandfather, and he always said, "You don't build legacies on screams." I used the money to buy another building. I turned it into a free housing project for survivors of domestic abuse. One evening, after a support group ended, I stepped outside and saw my parents standing at the edge of the street. They looked different. Now, smaller, tired, even embarrassed. "We are homeless," my mother mumbled. My father refused to meet my eyes. There was a pause, long and heavy. "You built all this," she whispered, eyes darting to the center's glowing windows. "Yes," I said calmly, "using our money." My dad grumbled. I smiled. "No, using what was left of your humanity, because that's all you ever gave me to work with." There was silence again. Then she asked the question I always knew would come: "Can we stay just for a night?" My breath caught. My childhood self wanted to scream yes, to finally be accepted, to be good enough. But the woman I'd become, she had already made peace with never being their daughter again. "You're not on the list," I said gently but firmly. "This place is for people who've suffered." And I turned away. That night, I sat in my office watching the security footage of them walking away into the cold. It should have hurt, but it didn't, because I had turned the ugliest day of my life, my graduation, into the foundation of a future that wasn't built on shame or pain, but purpose. And the next morning, I walked onto a stage again, only this time it wasn't to receive a diploma. It was to receive an award from the mayor's office for transforming pain into shelter. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Somewhere in the front row, I saw Hannah, my roommate turned sister, wiping her eyes. This time, I smiled without flinching because no one was there to slap it off my face, and that was the real graduation.